Hello everybody, welcome to a new tutorial from Sound for More. It's Leo speaking. Today I'm going to go through a full explanation of how to use Trooper from Yonac. Before I start, I would like to remind my viewers to subscribe as it helps with growing the channel. Thank you very much. So we are inside the AUM and I'm using Trooper as an AUV3 instance. As you can see, I just have an audio channel and I've just included an oscilloscope here as insert effects so I can see the waveform generated by Trooper. And as you can see, I can move up the waveform and then play on some of the presets and see the output. Okay, let's start going through some of the controls, starting at the very top. If you click here where it says the name of the preset, you have the name of the preset and also bank. You access this screen where on the left-hand side you have the list of available banks, which of course you can scroll up and down. And then on the right-hand side for the bank you have selected, you have the presets. You can also say make a preset a favorite, clicking on the stars, as normally you would do as typical interface from Yonac. And of course you can go into your favorite bank, of course, to see the presets which you set as favorite. You have a number of controls here at the bottom. The plus sign starting on the left, if you click on it, it allows you to create a bank. Let's say we create something like test and press enter. You have a new bank called test. Now you can click on the A here to change the name if you wish so. You can click on this symbol here, and then you can click on the X to delete the bank, or click again on the symbol to remove the deletion option. You can click on this network symbol, which allows you to export to the bank, email it, export it to a file, or import from a file as well. Next, what you can do also, if you have a preset which is selected, you can click on this button here and it will give you the option of save that preset, which is nice, with another name of course, so save as. This one is actually a save, so it will overwrite over that preset. Then you have an init, which will initialize the preset. Then you can change the name of the preset. Click on this A here, like so, rename preset. You can click on this icon here, which allows you to move from the preset from one bank to another bank. You can click this icon, which is similar to the previous icon up down here to the left, but this one acts on the preset. So again, you click on the X on the one which you want to delete. Similar, you have a similar icon here. You click on it and you can export the preset via email files on import as well from files. And then you have this icon here, which selects randomly a preset, which is really nice. You have a search here and you can input something like plug and it will search through, and then you can select that preset that you want to use. And then here you have this undo type of icon, which will restore the factory preset if you wish to do so. Now, to continue our tutorial, we click on init, so we initialize our preset. Now we click back on the name of the preset, which in this case is init, and there is no bank assigned. And this is what it sounds like. Now, so let's adjust a little bit also the y-axis here of the oscilloscope. You can see these sawtooth here, which is this waveform coming out from this oscillator number 1. Before going into that, let's see other options. The first one here, if you click on it, at the moment we see the controls plus the keyboard underneath, or you can expand the keyboard like so, or you can remove the keyboard like so. When you have the keyboard active, you can also go to this option here, which allows you to scroll the keyboard left and right using your fingers. Okay, let's lock that in. Next, you have settings. You can go to control surfaces, where, for example, you have your panic button. You can enable MPE, which is really nice. You have additional control. I'm not going to go through them all. Hopefully, self-explanatory. But let's remove MPE. You have rotary knobs, which you can set, and then you have also the scale, which you can change here as well if you wish so. Okay, and you can lock that as well. You have access to modulation setting for velocity, aftertouch, MPE, a modulation wheel, and you can lock them as well. And then you have your MIDI learning, which allows you to define MIDI map and also save them as well. And you have an about screen, which tells you the version of Trooper. Okay, well, let me know in the comments if you need more information about the settings. To me, they are quite straightforward, but if not, just leave me some comments. So let's focus now on the synth itself. Here you have the adjustment of the volume, and remember here on the left-hand side, on the top left-hand side, it gives you feedback on what you are changing. So in this case, it says you're changing the master volume in decibel. And of course, you see the waveform on the oscilloscope increasing. So let me show you. Some of the preset actually comes as default with a high volume, so just be careful as you browse from one to the next. Anyway, so top left of the synth, we have oscillator number 1 and oscillator number 2, which is this section here. And then you have columns of control. The first one is waves, the second one is volume, and the third one is octave, and the last one is to do fine-tune adjustment, with the exception of this one, which is for noise. This control is for noise, as I will show in a moment. This is also applicable to the Audible LFO down here, so where you have waveform, volume here, octave, and also fine adjustment. So let's start from the top. So we have volume set to mid here. The volume is set to 0 for oscillator number 2, and also the Audible LFO. That means we'll hear only oscillator number 1. And I'm going to use a combination of my fingers to play on the keyboard, and of course using my mouse so you can see what I'm changing on the controls. And as always, you see the waveform which is changing on the oscilloscope, which sometimes I will try to freeze as well. Like so. So you can see that waveform, how it is composed. Now let's choose other waveforms. You have this triangle here. There it is. And it's quite interesting as you get very close to it as well, to see from a virtual analog perspective how that is constructed. And let me show you other waveforms so that it will become more apparent. Let's go to this one, which is called Shark. Let's freeze so you can see the waveform of type Shark. Okay, let's go down to the pulse, like so. And you can see that is not perfectly level. So it's simulating a virtual analog. So you can see here and here that it's not perfectly level, which is okay. Then you have a third of a pulse, also 1/6 of pulse. And let's see how that changes as well. Oops, and let's have that to respond. So once I go from 1/6 of a pulse to a normal pulse. So hopefully you can see how the width of that pulse was changing. As you move to 1/6, it gets thinner. Okay, you can adjust the volume here, as I just explained. Yonac says that up to mid-level, you have a pure sound. Above that, that is not the case. Then you have 4 different, or 5, I should say, 4 different controls of octave, but you also have a 0 as well. And as you can see from the waveform here, the number of pulses within that period increases as I'm moving up by octave, because I'm increasing the frequency. You have also a sub-level as well, quite interested to see again the waveform and that level, and also a low level as well. Okay. Next we have, let's set this down to 0. Next we have noise, and you have 2 types of noise, pretty standard really. But check what happens on the graph on the oscilloscope as I increase the noise level. You can see the noise is coming in here on top of these poles and at the bottom of each of the pulses as well. And you have also a different peak noise as well. Always double click to reset to the dial or the control to the default settings. Okay, so we have then an oscillator number 2. So you set down to the volume to 0 for oscillator number 1. In this case, you don't hear anything if I press some keys. But of course, as soon as I increase the volume for oscillator number 2, you hear oscillator number 2. Works exactly in the similar way as oscillator number 1. And with the exception, you have this control here, which is fine-tune adjustment against oscillator number 1, and you see it says plus or minus at the top against oscillator number 1. And of course, if you pay attention on the waveform on the oscilloscope, as I increase, you'll have higher frequency because I'm adjusting the tuning up, and therefore more waveform or type so in this case. And of course, if I go the other side, it will be the opposite. I will have less. You can see here with fine-tuning adjusting to the minimum, you have a wider waveform of type so. Okay, let's double click on it. Perfect. Next, you have an Audible LFO. What does it mean? Well, let's set down to 0 the volume for oscillator number 2 as well, so we don't have any sound now as we click on the keyboard. Now let's increase the volume here for the Audible LFO. So you can hear this LFO. And this LFO, by the way, has an additional waveform, because you have also a sine one, which is quite nice. Triangle, a sine. You have volume here, octave as well, the fine adjustment as well, and you can also enable tracking as well if you like. However, you can also use it as an LFO to modulate oscillator number 1, 2, or the filter. And you can, in this case, have it still on as an audible source. And in this case, you just turn on, for example, oscillator number 1. And in this case, you have both combined. So you have a pulse combined here with a waveform of sine combined. As you can see, the pulse still coming here at the top, and then here coming down. And you see overimposed the sine wave as well. But you can also turn the volume down to 0 for the LFO, activate, for example, oscillator number 1, and then adjust the modulation against oscillator number 1. And you will hear it as I adjusted the dial. Actually, you don't hear it because the octave and the semi adjustment are too high. So let me show you as I decrease this down. And you can still do fine adjustment here. You can see also the waveform is like expanding horizontally here, going from more pulses to less pulses, as well as I'm modulating through the Audible LFO. Okay, so you can apply the same for oscillator number 2 and also for the filter as well. So let's reset these down to 0. So we're going to have only oscillator number 1 working. But of course, you can have the 3 combined, oscillator number 1, 2, and also the Audible LFO and mix them together. But please be careful again on the total volume as it will clip easily. Here you have controls for your legato. You can enable legato, yes or no. Then you can go from poly to mono. Pay attention as you go from poly to mono on what happens to the waveform. So this is poly, this is mono. You see the amplitude has gone up. So with mono is much higher, as you can see. And then you have your glide or portamento. Use your 1, press 1 key, and then you press the next one, and it will glide up or down depending on which key you pressed. And of course, as is gliding down, I have less pulses on the screen. As it's gliding up, I have more pulses. Okay, so let's reset the glide down to 0. We have a legato off and we put it on poly as well. Okay, next we have a filter section. It's quite straightforward, but there's something quite nice actually. You have a setting for tracking, and you can set it to be off or full, which is really nice, and you decide how much tracking you want to do. And you can hear straight away the difference. For example, let's put the cutoff somewhere here. As you can hear, just changing the cutoff frequency, and as you can see from the screen, it's like having an attenuate, actually softening the waveform, really. You can see it's becoming a sine wave as a type of form as I'm going very low with the cutoff on frequency. Anyway, let's set it up here and let's go up on the register somewhere here on the keyboard, and you can hear the effect of tracking. So you can hear it will adjust the frequency based on the key that you pressed, and therefore is doing the right tracking. Next, you have resonance level. You can see what's happening in terms of adding that resonance to the specified cutoff frequency. And be careful, when you go very high, it will start to self-oscillate. Okay, next we are going to have the amount for the filter envelope, which is down here. So you have your attack, decay, sustain, and release for your filter, and here you apply the amount. So let's have some attack, down the sustain to 0, and have a little bit of decay. So you can hear the envelope acting on the cutoff frequency. It's going from a very high level to normal, and coming back from the decay. Okay, so let's set down these to 0. You can also have your envelope on your voltage control amplitude here, your VCA. So again, you have attack, decay, sustain, and release, and very simple. Let's try longer attack for pad sound. You can see it's increasing slowly because we have a higher attack. If we remove the sustain, it will then go down to 0 as well, and the waveform will come down. It will come down quickly because the decay is down to 0, which of course you can adjust as you like. Okay, let's reset these to default. We have also an LFO here, so you can adjust the waveform. You can apply to oscillator number 1, 2, the filter, or also the Audible LFO. So let's try on the filter. Now you don't hear anything because you need to activate here with the modulation wheel. You can adjust the frequency. You can have it tracking, you can have it to reset when you press the next key, and also sync it to the host. Okay, so next we have this control here, Esprit, which is really nice. It acts to many of the synth controls, and is used to increase the amplitude, but also to make the sound a little bit more aggressive. So let me show you. Let's remove the cutoff, and now let's add slowly the Esprit to a higher level. So you can see the amplitude is changing, but what's happening is also adding some, if you like, adjustment or more signals or elements to the waveform so that it becomes more aggressive as type of sound. Be careful because it will pick, and here you have this control which allows you to have that more stereophonic sound, which again will increase the amplitude. You can combine the two, but again be careful on the amplitude. You can see it's picking already as an output up here in AUM. So let's disable this and let's reset down to the default. Next we have Arpeggiator. You can turn it on. Then decide up, up, down, down, or random sequence, or the sequence in terms of input, i.e. in the way that you press the keys on the keyboard. So up. Random, and if I was to press input, you can see it will follow the way that I press the note. So sorry, this is random. This is the input following. In this case, I was pressing first the F, then the D up here, and then the C. We followed that order. You can decide the length of note, the number of octave, it goes up. Let's do a down. You can decide how open the gate is. You can decide to hold the notes or to do a latch. So when you do latch, every time you press on new notes, it will restart those new notes, remove the previous one, or let go the previous one, or send the notes off messages, but hold the new ones. Okay, next we have a texturizer. So let me set down the mixer to 0, and also the depth down to 0, and also the rate and the feedback down to 0. Let's see how it sounds when I turn it on. Again, the amplitude went very high. Next, let's increase the mix. You can see some adjustment or artifacts coming in already. Then we can adjust the depth of the rate, for example. As a modulation, we can increase the feedback as well. And also introduce a delay. And of course, you can combine these with a more stereophonic effect. Just adjust the volume here in decibel too high. Okay, so be very careful on the volume. So this is used to create different type of effects. It could be chorus, it could be flanger, depending on the different settings that you select. Okay, next we have, let's move the oscillator a little bit, like so. We have delay, select activated. Let's adjust the volume a bit. You can adjust timing for left and right channel. You can adjust the mix and the feedback for the left and right channel, which is the length, how long the delay will go on for. Okay, so that's nice and simple. And lastly here, let me move the oscilloscope. We have an additional modulation source, the envelope here. So we decide the amount, and then we set the usual attack, decay, release, and sustain. And then we can apply these to oscillator 1, 2, the Audible LFO, or the filter. So let's try to oscillator number 1. Let's increase the amount. Let's decrease the sustain down to 0. Let's have some decay. So it's really nice to create more the type of effect instead of the normal presets. And of course, you can apply multiply to both all oscillators, including the filter as well. Etc, etc. So I'm going to stop here. Hopefully you enjoyed the tutorial. Now you know how Trooper works. It's a very nice virtual analog synth. Hopefully the controls that I have explained are intuitive enough. If you have any comments, of course, leave the comments on the video. And as always, see you next time. Bye.